Okay, hello, everyone. My name is Diamond Rivera of the Live Discussions with Diamond podcast. And this episode is sponsored by Shata Radio, where you can listen to this interview live in high quality right now. And tonight, people, we have a special guest here, a man who has traveled to many congresses, many shows all around the world, the one and only Mr. Mike Bello.
Yo, hello everybody.
What's up, Mike, man?
It's great. It's great to be here.
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, it's an honor for myself to have you here. We're starting this podcast middle of last year. You have been really one of the my favorite supporters in realizing so many of the guests that I've had on have really a connection with you and your influence, especially in the LA scene. Uh, Going back so many years. I mean, it definitely was destined to have you on this platform. And again, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
It's my pleasure, and the honor is mine. I've seen many of your interviews. You have some top notch people, and so interesting and so varied and meaty material. Kudos to you for the way that you're, blazing a trail for other podcasters in this industry in salsa. And it's a quality show. I really have a good time, listening to not just
Mhm.
your guests, but also your
Thank you.
comments and the way you thread your comments with, what your guests are saying. So it's uh, it's an interesting journey, and I'm glad that I've been able to kind of watch in the background and see how things are going. It's great.
No, I definitely appreciate it. And like I've told you privately, and many people know, the reason too I've started this podcast was because, especially in our dance community, whether it be salsa, bachata, what have it, a lot of times, many artists' stories can be almost seem forgotten or not really understood, and not realizing the contributions that many artists like yourself have put in to this community that has helped allow it to flourish over the years. I mean, especially the topics we'll talk about tonight. I think many dancers, especially, would love to understand, especially when people like us always say, man, back in the days, things were so much different. Things were so much, just everything was different. I mean, pre social media, back then, we're going to talk about even when there were times that dancers didn't want to be filmed. We remember those times. Yeah.
That
And we're,
was
we're gonna many people don't even can't even fathom that notion. But for me being also younger, but being in this game for going really into the 2000s, I understood. I had a younger perspective, but totally understood the topics that you, people like Rodney, and so many of our artists talked about in past interviews. But yeah, tonight I love asking, or usually how we start off is always asking the guest of kind of really how things started for them. So really understanding, we know what you've been able to do uh, in the successful sense, but understanding the journey of how you got there, I think is so much more important. So I would love for you to kind of tell myself and the audience of how it all really started.
well, as a kid growing up in New York, you're um, exposed to a lot of types of music. Pretty eclectic, in fact. Listening to you know R&B and rock and soul and and of course Latin music. From what would later become salsa, and also merengue and bomba and plena. These are the types of music that we were hearing as I was a child. But getting to dancing, though, I was in elementary school, and they had a dance program, and we learned all these different dances. And that was really my first experience in dancing. We were taught how to lead. The boys lead and the girls follow, but polka and rumba and a few others. and that's when when I was doing something with a partner. Later on, as I got older, in my teen years, I got into dancing to salsa. No timing, we did what we did. If I was to time it, I would probably say we were dancing on three. But salsa was big during those teen years, and then when I got older, I joined the service at 20, and almost at the same time, I started DJing and I started dancing salsa everywhere I went. There was also like just a tiny community of dancers, and so eventually, when I got out the service, came back to New York. This was like 88 when I first came back. I joined the service in 76, and I came back to New York in 88. And that summer, I came back like around uh, April, April of 88. And I went to live with my brother in the Bronx. And that summer, we used to do a lot of bike riding. And so we rode our bikes to Orchard Beach.
Mm.
And it was cool because, of course, at the time and for many years before that, and even afterwards, there was this guy who used to play salsa near the handball courts.
Mm.
And later on, I found out that it was Ernie Ensley. And one summer weekend day, rode to Orchard Beach, locked up my bike, and I saw this big crowd. It was a really big crowd, and I was like, "What's going on?" And music's playing and everything. No one's dancing. It was just this big crowd. So I weaved my way through, and there was this guy, maybe in his late 20s, early 30s, and this kid about 8 years old, and they were doing this dance routine. They were doing it. They were doing. It was like synchronized. What they were doing, they
Yeah.
were dancing. They were having these steps, which of course were shines. They had
Mm.
this shine routine, and I was agog, dude. I was there, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And I hit the guy next to me. I said, "Dude, when I grow up, I want to be just like that kid." And he said, "Hey, man, there's a place in the village, East
Mhm.
Village, called the Mambo Society. Every Wednesday, from 8 o'clock until 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock until 10 o'clock." So that following Wednesday, I went. It was this place called Manhattan Plaza, and in the Lower East Side in the village, and it was big. It was a big place. It
Mhm.
wooden floors, huge ceilings. I would say maybe 30-foot ceilings, but they had
Wow.
these fans that came down about 10 feet from the ceiling. It was a hot summer day. It was like August. It was hotter than blazes in there, and it was amazing to me. It was like that was I was in heaven because you walk in, salsa was being played. There was like a DJ playing salsa,
Mm.
and there was like a group of people, about maybe 30 people in about 4 or 5 lines,
Yeah.
just doing the basic step, marking the two. I didn't know what that was at the time, dancing on two or whatever, but they were
Yeah.
this was all dancing on two. And there was this couple leading them, Angel and Addie Rodriguez.
Mm.
I had met Angel a few months before that. That's a funny story. Maybe we'll get to it or not. But they were both, you know, making sure that they were, doing their basic right. And they had
Yeah.
all kinds of people. This was like after work. Some people, guys in their suits or whatever. Other
Mhm.
people went and changed their clothes in the bathroom, came back, and that's all they did. They just danced the basic. And then there was
Yeah.
another area where people would just, freestyle dancing with themselves or couples, whatever. And it cost $2 to get in.
Mm. Man,
And
imagine,
and
imagine
it
that.
was like, yeah, and it was so freaking hot. And we did that for 4 hours every Wednesday. And there was these two there was this one lady, I forget her last name, Elizabeth, little heavy set woman. She had a list,
Hmm.
It was a list of shines. It was a 25-step shine routine that was typed out on and cut out and papered, and everybody got it. And that's what we did. Those who weren't doing the basic step,
Hmm.
we're doing maybe another 30 people were doing the shine routine. And we just do
Yeah.
it over and over and over and over and over and over. All the 25 steps, kept doing it over basically all night,
Yeah.
all night,
Essentially, yeah.
you know? And, I had an affinity, I have an affinity with rhythm and stuff like that. So I was kind of getting, not all of them, uh, especially the first like 5 or 10 steps, I was getting pretty well. So we would take breaks, and sometimes other people, some of the people would come up to me and goes, "Oh yeah, I see you do that. Nice. Like, how do you do X? How do you do Y? How do you do Z?" And I was like, all right, so let's do it. And so that we would go over the first 5 shines, and I guess that was really the beginning of my teaching, because
Mm,
I was just I was getting better by doing that,
yeah.
and they were, picking it up relatively easy, because I would break it down instead of just
Hmm.
doing it. Elizabeth would just call out the shines, and we'd follow her and we'd do it. But when we would break apart and kind of get together to do these first 5 shines, I
Hmm.
would I would kind of break it down, you know, you know, pivot
Yeah.
triple, and the flare and things like that, crossover chuck.
Mm.
So yeah, so Mambo Society was like really the birth for me, was the birth of mambo for me. That was my first experience of mambo. And
Wow.
periodically, the girl who started it, her name is Paula Fournier. Unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago from cancer. But she was the one who started it. She was one of the people in Eddie Torres's first dance troupe.
Yeah.
When they did the Apollo,
Yes.
and so she started the Mambo Society, and what's his name? Ortiz. Oh, I can't remember his first name right now, but he was the one who actually rented the place. Him and this other guy, like silent partner, they rented Manhattan Plaza,
Hmm.
and Paula was the one that got it started. And everybody became a promoter. We promoted that place to the hilt, and we would get maybe 100 people there. It was, over time.
Yeah.
It
And
was it was Chooch, dude, it was so. And she would bring people out like periodically and tell everybody about the clave. She would have a pair of
mhm.
clave, and she said, "This is the clave. This is how it goes, and this is when you step. When you step,
Yeah.
this is where you're stepping to the clave." And that was my first experience to clave. And I have to say that it was like religion. You know how religion, you don't have proof, you just have faith in it. You know, and in the beginning, for me, it was, I didn't need the proof. The proof to me was how it sounded, how it felt, and what she was saying made sense. And I was like, oh yeah, I believe that. And so for years afterwards, I always talked about the clave, even though I didn't really know a lot about it.
Mm,
I knew very little of the clave, and not until years later. This was like '88, so you know fast forward to '97 when I moved to
yeah.
LA. I still didn't know. I just knew that clave was the driving force behind salsa music and dance,
Mhm.
but I didn't know the breakdown of the clave, and I didn't know the breakdown of the tumbao. But um, before I moved to LA, I had been doing a lot of pre-production work, music wise.
Yeah.
I would do mostly hip hop, but I was trying to start, a Latin segment,
Mhm.
and didn't pan out. But anyway, I had I had gotten, before I left New York, I had gotten these two practice drums. They were just heads, conga drums by LP, right? And when I got those, at the same time, I bought this sampling CD. I don't think I've ever even talked about this before. I got the sampling CD from a famous, I can't remember his name right now, famous conga player. And, all rights are, you have the right to use it in any way you want and all that. And so later on, a couple years later, that was the basis to my uh, uh, salsa rhythm, salsa music rhythm phrasing and timing media,
Hmm.
which first turned out to be a CD, and then now it's a course online. And so all of the percussive loops and all that came from that CD. But it gave me that opportunity to use something that people can relate to
Hmm.
understand. But when I got to LA though, in the beginning I still didn't know what was going on with the clave and all that stuff. Uh, and I right away got um, in touch with Edie Lewis,
Oh,
right? Edie the salsa freak.
yep.
And so when we talked, when we finally, I was in LA for a few months. I didn't do anything because I was up in Palmdale,
Hmm.
waiting for my wife to drop the kid, my youngest daughter.
Yeah.
And but then once but I was communicating online, with her, Albert Torres, and a couple other people that were, there was a chat board that a lot of people were, communicating on,
Yeah.
different topics and stuff. By the time I moved down to the valley, and I met Edie and Marla Friedler, and we met at her house down in El Segundo, and a couple of other people too, like Joby Brava, and a couple of other people. And then Edie immediately gave me a department in Salsa Web. So I became director of music and promotions for Salsa Web at the time.
Hmm.
So it was like it was cool, it was nice. And months later, Edie had put together like a compilation video of her dancing with other people,
Yeah.
and she asked me if I could put together like a track, just an audio track for her that she could put behind. You know, the dancing wasn't going to be timed to the track. I go, yeah, I'll do that. So I made and I think I used that sampling CD to make and I don't know how long it was, a half an hour, I don't know. But later on, I felt like, oh man, it was so messed up. It was so messed up, and I realized later when I learned about clave and all that, and
Hmm.
I the way I edited it and all that, the clave was being totally mashed up. And so I never talked about it after that. Once I knew what I was doing, I never said, "Oh yeah, I did this thing for Edie and blah blah
Yeah.
blah." And I wanted to kind of detach myself from that, But sight unseen, man. One day I was in the pool watching my kids, and I see the mailman come, and it was a package for me, and it was in an envelope, like one of those Tyvek envelopes,
Hmm.
and it was a book. And I opened it, and I was blown away because the book was recently, it had only just come out, and in fact, I have it right here. This is the book right here. This right here. I'll put it real close so you can see it. Bam!
The essence of
This
Afro-Cuban percussion
and
and
drum
drums.
set by Ed Uribe. And let me tell you, this became my Bible.
Hmm.
That was the first piece of text that I used to help me and now going back to as a kid, I learned music in junior high school. I was a clarinetist, and I used to read music and understood music theory and all that. Of course, over time, you lose that. But when it came to the charts and all that, and the breakdown of the rhythms, which is written in musical staff, I understood it. I got it. And so I would everywhere, even sitting on the bowl, I'd be out there tapping stuff, and and I had like a 10 CD changer in my car, and of course in LA you can't go anywhere without a car, so you're driving everywhere. So I would be listening to the music, and I would be dissecting the music in my brain, rhythm per rhythm, based on this information that, and I found it was, of course, it was true. Everything was true. Every rhythm that I followed
Hmm.
was always correct. You know, that's not to say all music is correct, because
Okay.
there is there are
Mm.
there is a small percentage of music that the clave is not, you know, happening. And
Yeah.
but anyway, although the music is happening, like La Danza del Mono. I don't know if you know
Mhm.
that one. That one, the clave is not right, but it's a great tune. It sounds great, done with the organs. But anyway, that was like I was blown away. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. This is unreal. But by this time, I was already teaching,
Mhm.
because when I got to the valley, I needed a job. I didn't have one, because my intention, because of what I had been doing in New York,
Yeah.
was to do sound design, like do like work at a jingle house. You know what those are,
Oh yeah, like kind of
right?
just making little jingles for like commercials and
Right,
yeah.
exactly, right. So it's basically a studio business, a studio that does music for, or sound effects or whatever for, for commercials. So um, before I went to LA, there was a friend of mine who was a partner at a jingle house, and so he he was the one that got me started into doing digital editing. And
Yeah.
so I was like, all right, when I get to LA, I want to try and work for Jingle House.
Hmm.
So I had this sampling keyboard, and but it never made it to LA. In fact, it never even left Brooklyn, because um, I was staying at my in-laws before we moved, and then all of our stuff had already been shipped, but I had some personal stuff that I was keeping, and still working on, until we would fly out to LA. And UPS came, took my keyboard, and found out months later that UPS stole my keyboard. It, it it was delivered to another address in Brooklyn, even though the
Wow.
address that I had was in LA. It was actually in Palmdale. So unfortunately, even though I filed a claim
Hmm.
and I got money for it, it wasn't enough to buy another keyboard,
Yeah.
because I had the keyboard for several years, and so it depreciated. So that thing went down the tube. So I got a job as a DJ at this restaurant, this club restaurant in Marina Del Rey. And what happened there? This is how I got my very first job as a dance instructor. It
Hmm.
wasn't even a job, actually. The job was to be the DJ at this place,
Yep.
and it was to play salsa music. And so this girl, she was actually they had another restaurant in Santa Monica, and she was like a bar back or a waitress or whatever at that one. And she knew how to dance to salsa music. So they asked her if she would teach. And so when I saw her teach that first class, I was like, oh my God, I can't,
What
I
is she
can't,
doing?
I can't believe this. And I'm not even an instructor. Like I'm like, this is some bad. So when she was done with the class and everything, and she came to the booth and we would talk, and I said, yeah, I dance and I do this and I do that, and then I started dancing to the music, and she was like, oh man, you need to be teaching this class, and I was like, okay. So not knowing how to formulate, instruction or
Hmm.
whatever, I started to promote, dance classes there, and I got a decent following, especially because I was already dancing. I was going out to like Sportsman's Club and other dance venues in LA that a lot of the dancers were dancing to, and people were recognizing that I could dance
Hmm.
well, you know. And of course, I dance on too, but I could dance anything.
Yeah.
So it was it was a whole nother world dancing in LA, when most of the people didn't dance on two. And
Yeah.
the thing about in New York, right? even if because not every New Yorker dances on two. Come on,
That's
that's
true.
not
That is-
reality.
yeah.
But I could get someone to dance on two with me,
Mm.
because even if they weren't dancing on, like I would let them kind of lead at first, like they're dancing, and first couple of steps I go, okay, she's on whatever, let's say three, and then we're dancing on three, and then I would do a side break,
To kind of
and
get
that
back in. Yeah.
right, and she would follow that, and now we're on two. Yeah, I could only do that in New York. I couldn't
Yeah. In
do that
LA. Yeah.
in LA. I would do a side break, and only their foot would go.
Yep.
Right,
Your body wouldn't.
the body wouldn't. So like there wasn't really a weight change. So it was I found like a couple dozen people who could dance on two, and other people who were interested in all that,
Hmm.
and that's how I got started. With teaching and promoting my classes and things like that. And then this one woman approached me one day. Her name is Adrian Tripp,
Hmm.
and turns out that she saw a lot of my postings on the Salsa Web chat board, and she
Yeah.
wanted to see if I was the real deal. So she came down, and then she asked if I would dance with her, and she was like, "Oh my God!" And and so we got to talking, and she had been a ballroom dance instructor back in the day.
Yeah.
She was older than me. She was about maybe 15 years older than me. And so we started to talk a lot about mambo and what to do with it in LA,
Hmm.
And so we collaborated and we talked a lot about it. And then she introduced me to the swing world, like
Hmm.
Skippy Blair. I don't know if you know
Yep.
about it. If you out there, I think it's called the Golden State Dance Teachers Association. It's a big swing organization, and
West
people
Coast swing.
West Coast swing, yeah. But they do other types of swing. West Coast swing is the main thing, but
Yeah.
there's about three or four other types of swing that they also are involved in. And when they do their events, they're very organized, very. When it comes to competitions and all that. So that's where I started to really learn about how to teach and create a syllabus and things like that. That, and one time Adrian and I, uh, we brought out Fuerza Latina, right, to do weekend workshops, and we brought out Descarga Latina.
Mm.
And that's when I actually found out about crossbody lead. I didn't know about crossbody
Mhm.
lead until Addie Diaz, right?
Addie Diaz from
Addie
yes,
Diaz, right? Or Addie Severio, right?
yes.
And so she came out there with Nelson, and she mentioned crossbody lead. I'm like, what's that? And when she told me, I knew what it was. I just didn't know that it had a name.
Mm.
And like, oh, so that was crossbody lead was really the first, like technical jargon that I learned relative to teaching. And
Yeah.
then, with the whole Skippy Blair thing and all that. And I was like, okay, now I learned how to try and put a syllabus together. And because the classes that I was having at the club was just a one-time thing, how
Mhm.
it is, like a
Yeah.
nightclub or a social type, dance class, as opposed to a structured, 8-week, course, for beginners or whatever.
Mhm.
And after a while, after about maybe 2 years, I was working nearly every day. I was between private and teaching in the Valley, teaching in Hollywood. A new studio had opened up, which I got a first crack at, and got a nice like 1,000 square foot
Mm.
space to. I brought the very first social to LA Mambo, and I brought all my
Wow.
equipment. I had speakers, my whole DJ setup, and I just had had let me see, we had a beginner class and then an intermediate class and then a 3 hour social,
Oh wow. I like that. I
all in
like.
the same room, and it
Oh.
was awesome. It was great. Still have pictures from that. it was a wonderful thing, And I would bring my congas out there, of course, and
Yeah.
teaching, about the clave, teaching about the tumbao, and getting everything together. So that was the bare beginnings,
Hmm.
you know. And of course, congresses were starting to happen, right? Because
Yeah.
that 98, I think, was the first congress ever,
I think
the
it was
Puerto
98 or
Rico.
99 was the
Yeah,
Puerto
and
Rico.
Puerto Rico, yeah.
Hmm.
And then the following year, Albert had his. Although Albert was, he partnered up with Eli, Irizarry, who
Yeah.
was the producer of the Puerto Rico one, and of course their sponsor was Bacardi, right?
Hmm.
So that year, that first year, I didn't have a booth, but I got a chance to teach a less than an hour class, and from that day forward, little by little, I was, getting to more places. I was doing, weekend workshops around the country. I would either drive or fly. People would bring me out, like Gabriel Romero, or I went up to, little upstate um, California, San Francisco and stuff, and Arizona. And after a while, I was really focusing, even though I was teaching everything. I was teaching beginner, intermediate classes, shines, plus,
Hmm.
the biggest class, the one that I focused on the most was the salsa rhythm for dancers. In
Yeah.
fact, that has never changed. That the name of that class has never changed in 20 years. 20 years, and got the CD for that with a 20-page booklet. It went everywhere. I sold thousands of copies. It was a wonderful thing, and being able to meet other people from other, you know, for example, Chicago. That very first Congress was such an eye opener because most of the performances, although I didn't, I'm not one for watching performances unless I know or
Mm.
people specifically, or if someone
Yeah.
asks me, "Hey man, check out my," if they ask me to check out their performance, I'm there, for support.
Hmm.
But after a while, I was like, how many times can I see a crossbody lead? I mean, come on. I'm like, certain groups I would definitely watch, like Caribbean Soul or
Hmm.
Felipe Polanco, or I can't remember anybody else. But that first year in Chicago, most of the things, most of the performances, and most of the classes were on one.
Mm.
And even though it was big, it was a they had a couple thousand people at that event,
Yeah.
each night. And that's where I met Grisel and Chachi. That's another story. But the following year,
Hmm.
most of the performances were on two. I mean, Chicago, just like, once they got exposed to dancing on two, it
Yeah.
it just flipped, like.
Hmm.
And it was a wonderful feeling. And I have to say, I watched a lot of the performances then, because I was like, holy cow, I can't believe this. Like it was like unbelievable.
Yeah,
You know,
because I mean, like you're talking about the influx of when on two became more prevalent, especially in our scene. Like it just took off. Now almost every there's at least an on two collective now in almost every state, every dancing city on two now is becoming that.
in the world, yeah. Yes, it was amazing to see, that, and not only in every city, but almost
Mhm.
every weekend in multiple cities.
Yeah.
Every weekend there was a congress or a festival or a
Hmm.
weekender, in like three or four different, locations around the globe, or even in the U.S. Um, and it was crazy because, sometimes people would get upset. Why are you doing your congress on my weekend? You know, it would be like, why are you doing on my weekend? That, it's like you're stealing my
Yeah.
attendees, and It was crazy. Some of the backbiting that you would feel and see and hear, and salsa's great, but then there was always that negative type of competition.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that
Yeah. No, I agree. Because for me, I was a teenager watching from behind the scenes of the inner workings of things. And I think really the biggest thing was we wanted our scene to grow. Inevitably, it was growing, but at a faster rate than we could handle, but also in terms of money. When money gets involved, that's when kind of they say all bets are off for some people. There are people like social dancers, attendees who come and they have a certain atmosphere they bring to these events. Then you have the artists who say, all right, I have to be bigger and better than the year before. I have to show something that's going to show my individuality and also rake in the money or the residuals from that. And that's where,
that's that's hard to do.
yeah, and
It's
that's the conflict. It's of
Yeah,
how can I keep the genuineness but still be successful without kind of selling myself.
yeah. I tried that too. In fact, myself, I tried to, I threw my hand in there to do more of a local thing, not a
Hmm.
national or global event. I did what was called the Southern California Mambo Conference.
Hmm.
I did it for 2 years. The first time, and they were both intimate. There was like only several hundred people for the weekend, but still book rooms for the weekend and all
But
that. And
the way you say it, it's like several hundred people. I mean, it's as you notice with the saturation of events, saturation of teachers all over. I love the appeal that the scene has, but realizing when we were in this scene, really kind of from the beginnings of it, becoming mainstream, things are a lot more localized. It's like the community was different. Now there's so many events happening every which way.
yeah, yeah, competing for time and space, in this environment can be daunting.
Yeah.
And I know that for me, let me tell you, if it wasn't for the grace of several instructors
Hmm.
who opted not to get paid, Edwin was one of them. You know, is what saved me because I didn't make any money. I broke even.
Yeah.
I broke even because of several instructors were like, "That's all right, Mike. You don't have to pay me, man. It's cool." Edwin, actually, in the beginning, it wasn't after the fact. It was before the fact. Edwin was the only one before the fact who was like, "Mike, if you want, I'll teach a class. You don't have to pay me anything.
Yeah.
You know." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. That's awesome, man. Thanks." And so I put him on. And of course he did a great job. I checked out his classes, and they were wonderful. He had a different approach to teaching, which I liked. And but it was a wonderful experience. uh, and my heart goes out to event producers because there are so many things that can go wrong, because there's so much, and you have to, this isn't a thing that is done in a couple of months. You have to spend nearly a year to make it happen. If you want a good event, if you want a successful event, if you want to make money, and I didn't make any money, and I think the first one I planned, I started working on it about 6 or 7 months in advance, and I realized, oh shit, the next one I was like, I started promoting right after the event, and hoping for the next one, and it was beautiful too because at the time, um, Johnny Polanco was still, of course, was around, but there's a group in LA called Freddie Crespo. He had that same year, I think it was 2001. That same year, he started the Mambo Review. It was his first like Mambo orchestra. It was like an 18-piece, orchestra. And so I had them. I had Johnny Polanco on Saturday night, and I had, you know, Freddie Crespo and his Mambo Review on Sunday night, or vice versa. I don't know. I can't
Hmm.
remember which, but it was fantastic Mambo all night long.
Yeah.
It was just great. In fact, Edwin, That was the first time I met Magna. Edwin actually brought Magna to the event.
Magna
You know,
Gopal. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That was the very first time. That was about 2001. Yeah, I was like, who is this girl? She came in this flowing like aqua dress, and I was
Yeah.
like, damn. And you from where? You from Canada? And you do what? This is nice. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, um, doing these events can be it can have a deleterious effect on the individuals who are actually responsible to make it happen. Which is sad. And I mean, look at it. Look at some of the heavy hitters that are not with us anymore, and
Mm.
largely, in my opinion, because of the work that they do. It's very stressful.
Yeah.
Albert's not around anymore. Dave is not around anymore. Choco's not around anymore. And these guys were like heavily
Yeah.
invested in what they do. Albert more so than anybody else on the planet.
Hmm.
Albert was ever present. I don't think that guy ever rested. He was always on the move. You know,
Yeah.
and after a while, I wasn't going crazy, but I was like, I was having back aches and hip aches and stuff like that, and it
Yeah.
was, it had nothing. It had to do mostly with the stress. You
Yeah.
know.
I mean, anyone doing any kind of event, organizing,
Hmm.
promoting, um, I've been witness to it. Me being a videographer, working directly with a lot of the organizers, people
Mm.
don't understand. Especially, it's not easy to run an event. Most event organizers will tell you between 1 to 3 years, you're going to know how successful your event will be, especially your first event. Be lucky if you break even. Most of the
Hmm.
time, you're going to lose money, but it's up to you and to see if there is a future. I mean,
Yeah.
because people can love coming to your events, but at the same accord, you taking all of that stress that comes along with it, I give it up to anyone uh, organizing any type of events. So really hearing kind of the basis of how it really started and the experiences you've been to have along the way. What really a question I do have is kind of seeing over the years of you traveling, being able to teach, especially for salsa musicality and rhythm courses, what have really been the lessons that you have learned kind of from where things started back in around 2000 to now, kind of present day or really pre COVID? Have you really seen the growth and evolution within the community with so many new dancers coming in, or do you feel like there are more concerns than anything?
Well, interesting as that question is, I can only answer that partially, especially since, I was disconnected from, the scene or the circuit, if you
Hmm.
will, for more than a handful of years. I know that the scene has changed because of, and that I could speak on, is the inclusion of the different dance styles like
Yeah.
bachata and kizomba, zouk. They've made big inroads. A lot of people are super interested in bachata. You know, a lot of people are very interested in kizomba. There are more than a few people that have interest in zouk. And so um, these things start to um, take time away from the mainstay of these events, right?
Hmm.
To a degree. I mean, I don't think it's detrimental. I don't. I think it just helps to serve these events, because then you have more people being, introduced. Like if you're coming out to a salsa congress that includes bachata, well, you're getting two bangs for your buck,
Yeah.
right? And that's a good thing, because if you're a bachatero and you're really only interested in bachata, but then you go, I'm gonna take a break and go into the salsa
Yeah.
room, and and get my mambo on.
Yeah.
And so I think that's good. But I think for somebody like me, especially coming back I have to
Mhm.
recognize that um, that is something that has affected the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
And so you have to. One time I even went to Eddie 2 years ago. I went to one of his socials just to speak to him, just to ask
Mhm.
for his advice about how to get back in, because
Mhm.
because the scene is different, because things are not as they were before, where
Yeah.
the focus was just on salsa and all that. And he basically said just to stay with what I'm doing and just just keep plugging in.
Mhm.
And but as far as teaching my classes, what has changed for me personally is that my classes change depending on the attendance, and
Mhm.
not volume, but on questions. You know, Several instructors have said this before, even as recently as Mario yesterday, when he said that he's an ever-present student,
Yeah.
right? But my teaching has evolved based on what I've learned from students. For example, in my rhythm classes, um, questions are answered at any time. If I'm teaching something and you have a burning question in your mind about something, I want to know what it is now. I don't want you to
Yeah.
forget or wait till the end of the class, right? And I let everybody know that this is not only okay, but not everybody gets all the material at the same time. They don't get it the same way, the same time. So sometimes you need a question to clarify something. You may be a little slower, or you may be a little faster, and you have a question to get you to that fastest point. Like, hey, I'm over here. This question will make sure that I'm here, right? So they ask the question, and so I encourage that, and I tell people, if you can't take it, then you just got to cool your jets, you know. And but it has helped me,
Yeah.
because then I feel like I'm one more for analogies, especially
Mhm.
if you don't get something one way. One thing I learned as an instructor, and I think this goes well for any teacher, is that you not everybody learns the same way. Right? I mentioned
Yeah.
before, so you have to be able to connect with those people who are not at the same speed.
Mhm.
So you teach to the middle, and then you expect to get stuff from the people that are not quite getting it
Yeah.
and those that get it. So the questions I get sometimes, I have to change it so that um, they get it. But what happens is that question created a way to teach it that actually made learning easier,
Yeah.
you know and so there are several times where there's this thing I call a revolving door, right?
Mhm.
When it comes to clave, right? Because there's two parts to the clave, right? You got the two side, right? The first two beats of the clave, or the two beats of the clave, and then
Mhm.
there's three beats to the clave. So the two sided clave is what I focus on, because we're dancing on two side, easy to get in. It's like an open door. Where the three sided of the clave is like a revolving door. It takes you longer to get through. You can
Yeah.
get it, but it takes you a little longer. And so someone had asked me a question about clave, and I broke it out that way. And now I use that as a way to illustrate what the clave is about, and how it's like, and how easy you can get into it, or how difficult you can make it. That's just a little example. So when it comes to me, the more I teach, the more I learn how to teach better.
Mm. I I love that. I mean, because realizing over time, as things evolve and the audience changes, even it could be from the age or just what people are more listening to, seeing that you can still take your material and allow people to digest it in their own way, I think is really great because I mean, with the wisdom that you have, the classes that you've taught, the snippets that I've heard, these honestly were kind of really revolutionary because a lot of times all you saw at classes were people teaching choreography, but there were so many people within those classes who were taking them that wanted to know more. They wanted to kind of dig deeper into understanding the clave, understanding that beat, understanding that sound. So for me, even doing my research and seeing the vast amount of just like material you had out was so important to understand. I mean, even as we talk about the old scene and the new scene, for example, one notion I would say is something that I've heard you talk about and we've talked about as well was there was a time when dancers did not want to be filmed on a social. This was kind of a private moment. But before we get into that, throughout the interview, we do have
Uh-huh.
usually live time comments coming in. For example,
Yes.
Miss Ava Apple here
Hey,
showing
Ava.
love. And I think she said earlier from our earlier discussion, it was Angel Ortiz. I think that was the name as
Yeah.
well. We have Miss Carmen all the way from St. Louis here saying that she,
Yo, that's my girl.
yes, she
What's
will
up,
also be
Carmen?
on the podcast in
Yes.
February as
I love her.
well.
Yeah.
One
I love her
person,
podcast.
oh yeah, I love the work she's doing out there with those amazing women.
Yes.
And
Important work. It's great.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and as well here we have all the way from North Carolina, Mr. Norberto Beto Herrera.
Beto.
Yes,
Beto, what's up, my man? I haven't seen you in so long, man.
he
I haven't
says
seen you in so long.
Mike Bello was such an inspiration for me to research more information about salsa music and history. Thanks for all of the knowledge you've shared with our scene. And that right there is a testament to showing that,
Thanks, Beto.
you know, what you've been able to create over the years
Yeah.
is really instills in people, as well as all the way from New York, Mr. Mike Movimiento
What's up,
Garcia.
Mike?
Yes, a former student of Addie when
Yeah.
she had attitude,
The
and as
attitude
well
dancers.
here,
Yeah.
all the way from LA, Mr. Jimmy Rumba,
Jimmy, what's up? Been a
and
long time.
it's beautiful seeing just people here supporting and realizing again from the many artists that I've spoken to, they've told me so many good words about you and how for me I knew it was so important to have you on because when people are always saying, "Oh, what was the scene like back then?" You're one of those people that can talk about that. And even what I just said earlier when we talked about dancers at one point shying away from the camera from a social dance, which now seems unheard of. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's such a vast difference. No, they didn't shy away. I mean, you know, you could get hurt.
mm,
They'd be ready to throw down. Yeah. Because of one of the first things that could be said is like, you don't have my permission. Who gave you who gave you permission to record me? Oh yeah, they would get in your face. And then even the first couple of years in Congresses, and there's a place for cameras, and you know then there's a time not to be recording. I remember
mm,
one time I was teaching. It was in Texas, and this was before I released the video, the Salsa Rhythm for Dancers
mhm,
video, and so I'm teaching I'm teaching the material, the rhythm, and all that, and then I was like, there was a guy all the way in the back of the room because everybody was sitting down. Everybody was sitting
mm,
down, and I'm going through stuff, and because it's more lecture. There is time where you get up and do a little bit of
yeah.
dancing, but it's mostly lecture, so you take notes and stuff like that. So people sitting on the ground, and there's a guy in the back, and I see a little red light. He had his little camera, little red light, and I'm like, dude, come on, man, don't record this class, because you record it and then it goes out there and then you dilute what I'm doing, and
Mhm,
then and not only that, I have a recording of when I first got the material recorded, right? It was this woman who was taking my classes, and she took that class, and she was a documentarian. So she brought
mhm,
her camera, and it was a very super low budget, you know, and when I mentioned that, when I got the videos and I was looking at it, I was disappointed, and I wasn't going to release it. So in that particular class, I'm telling I'm like, dude, man, come on, like don't record this, it's like and when I mentioned that I had the stuff, and a couple people in the audience goes, I'll buy it, you know, and I was like, really? Like, yeah, I'll buy it. I'll because the material was golden. It
Yeah.
was the material that was important. It wasn't so much for, production value. It was information value.
Mm.
And so, as soon as I got home from that event, I started editing it, and within months, I was ready to, get it, put on VHS,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's another story too.
Yeah.
That's another story. 2004. When was it? Remember the New York, New Jersey Salsa Festival? That
Was it? Wait.
was it. 2004. I
It
think it
might
was
have been.
Choco and Luis Segarra, right?
Yes, I remember they did
Right.
that. I'm not specific on the year, but I definitely remember when they did that collaboration together.
Well, well. Okay. So check this out. All right. So I know you, and I know you know David, of course. I know you love him. I love him too because back in the Mambo Society days, him and Nidia Ocasio were dance partners, and he came to my house once. You know, people don't know this, but I went to the when I got out the Air Force, I went to school. I went to the Institute of Audio Research,
Hmm.
where I got my certificate for multi-track recording technology. And so at that time, people were still editing with tapes,
Yeah.
right, reel to reel. So he knew that, and he came to me. And he goes, "Oh, I'm doing a thing for Nidia, and her and I are gonna be doing this, and I need this music, blah blah blah." So he brought me the cassette, and so I edited the cassette, at home, and he took off with it, and he did, he did that performance from those edits. But David, back in 2004, uh, earlier that year was like I think it was San Francisco
Hmm.
Congress or the year before, and I was hitting him up about teaching a class. He goes, "Yeah, let's talk, blah blah blah." So we talked, and he goes, "I don't know, So I go, "Look, dude, come to the class."
Hmm.
I forget which Congress it was. Come to the class. So he came to the class. He stayed like maybe 20 minutes and then he left. So then I didn't see him the rest of the event. And then I called him from LA. And then he goes, "Mike, but you're boring."
Mm.
And I'm like, "Okay, I could understand that. But you didn't stay for the whole class.
Yeah.
Maybe the part that you came in, because not for everyone,
Hmm.
if you just finish eating or whatever, and it's mostly lecture, and I do have jokes, and I do interact with people and all that.
Hmm.
Anyway, long story short, it was a no. Fast forward to the New York, New Jersey Salsa
Yeah.
Festival, and I have a bunch of my, because I have a booth,
Hmm.
and I have some freshly made salsa rhythm for dancers. I think it was DVDs. I have 4 DVDs in the case,
Yeah.
and I run into Eddie Torres, and I gave him one. I said, "Eddie, man, I want you to have this because I think you'd appreciate it." Blah blah blah. He goes, "Oh yeah, thanks, blah blah blah." So he goes, "Come here." So we start walking together. He walked up to David, and he goes, "David, if I had the time and the wherewithal to do this, I would teach this, but you need to have Mike at the Congress."
Mm.
And I got signed because of that.
Wow.
I taught the class on just on the strength of Eddie's
Hmm.
thing, and it was a successful class once I taught it. But 2004 and forward was just amazing years.
Yeah.
It was amazing years.
No, I definitely agree. And, just being able to hear you tonight, just talking about those memories means so much. I know you definitely have a lot of stories. We're kind of heading into the conclusion, but we're having now the segment that I love to do called the randoms, which allows myself and the audience get to know a little bit more about you. Some questions are very interesting. Some questions might be a little spicy, kind of maybe your do's and don'ts on what dancers like and they don't like. So I definitely think it'll be interesting. So definitely let me know when you are ready.
I'm ready.
All right.
Should
All
I be
right.
afraid? Oh, go ahead.
No, no, no.
Wait a
It's
minute.
pretty harmless. I mean, questions can vary and change over time,
Okay.
but I definitely think with these set of questions here, you know, it would definitely be fun and interesting. All right. So, first question is, what is your favorite food?
Favorite food? I would have to say Puerto Rican food. I love Puerto Rican food. I mean, I grew up, with my mom mostly, making stuff, and eventually I started making stuff on my own.
Hmm.
I cook every day. I mean, I make, I don't, I rarely go out to eat.
Yeah.
I'm a vegetarian slash vegan. Right now, I'm not
Okay.
vegan because I had a tuna fish sandwich today, but it's the last can because December I cheated.
Mm.
I bought eggs and tuna for the month of December, and I only have two more eggs left, and I finished the tuna, and then I'm back. Then I'm back vegan.
Okay. Okay.
But I cook all the time, and mostly it's Puerto Rican stuff. Like I just finished yesterday because I had leftovers for like 3 or 4 days of asopao. I made a
Mm.
vegan asopao and with some avocado. So
Ooh, okay.
yeah,
All right. All
yeah.
right. I like that. All right. Next question would be, if you can close your eyes right now, what is one event that you would love to be at?
Love to be at. I would love to be at Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I got lots of love there. I got lots of love most everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think I got the most love in Chicago. And Chicago, I got a lot of great memories from Chicago, especially for the first year or two.
Mm-hmm.
I reconnected with like Troy
Yeah. Troy
in
Anthony.
yeah, and that's when I first met Georgette. Georgette had just been only performing like that. That was the first year she was performing
Mm.
with Troy, and I was amazed at her dancing. Then I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like she was you're phenomenal, And it's weird too because when the event was, I usually like I go to the event and I usually try to get the first plane smoking on Monday,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that means I got to leave a little earlier
Oh yeah.
so I can get to the airport. Got to the airport, whatever, and either my flight was canceled, whatever, or I couldn't get in. So I went back to the hotel and caught up with Troy, and we sat in the hallway, man, on the rugs, the three of us, and just talked, man. It was great, And it's
Mm.
things like that, It's you know, besides the dancing and everything, it's the connection with people and the reconnection. I first met Grisel there too, and
Mm.
immediately I told, "You're my mambo daughter," you
Mm.
know. And for years, I would call her my mambo daughter, and even when I met her mother,
Yeah.
so it was it was great, just a lot of great times. Gina Weichland, who was like the director, Rosita's daughter, um, very sweet, and worked with me in making me feel comfortable and at ease and all that. It was yeah. Chicago would be top of my list.
Okay. All right. Next question. This one might be a spicy one. You have
Okay,
two groups.
two
Sp-
groups.
yes, Spanish Harlem Orchestra or
Uh-huh.
El Gran Combo.
And what's the question?
The question is, who would you rather listen to? If you could,
Oh, oh.
yeah.
Well, damn, that's a hard one,
I
dude.
know.
What
I had
you
it.
picked?
That's a new one.
Yeah, no shit. You caught me off guard with that one. Yeah, because I love them both for different
No.
reasons. Gran Combo goes back to, wow, first time I heard them, I think I was in the Air Force. And they're just so phenomenal. But Spanish Harlem is
Yeah.
also like, has that New York feel, the jazziness.
Yep.
It's more, it has a little bit more swing. Gran Combo swings. Yeah, it's a toss up, dude. I would have to say it depends on which one is played first.
Okay. I like that. I
Yeah,
love asking those type of questions. Definitely
yeah.
getting
That's
people. All right.
difficult.
All right, next question is if you could close your eyes right now and be at a social dance,
Hmm.
who is that one follow that you could dance with?
Damn. Dude, you're talking about dude, you're talking about almost 50 years of dancing.
Yeah.
But I have to say, okay, there's one person I remember when I first came back to New York,
Hmm.
and we had been communicating. We met online. We met like through Facebook or whatever. I liked what she said. She was very knowledgeable. She was
Hmm.
very articulate, sweet, And so I come back to New York, and of course, the first place because I came back on the 28th of June, which was like a Monday or Tuesday, and
Hmm.
that Thursday was cachet,
Mm.
the old cachet. Like I'm
Yeah, it's the one
46,
that we used to go down.
46 feet, go downstairs. And I saw her coming down the stairs because I knew what she looked like. I saw her coming down the stairs, and I'm like, I don't remember if I approached her then or on the dance floor, but that was a dance that I really loved, and I love watching her dance too.
Hmm.
Is Marisol Cedera.
Oh, yes. DJ
She,
Marisol.
yes,
Yes.
Marisol is such a phenomenal dancer.
Yes.
And in fact, one time, I I used to go to Cache, and sometimes I'd take a break and I'd sit towards the back, like where the
Yeah,
bar
where the
is.
bar was. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were seats there. Sometimes I would nod out for a little bit. I'd take a little snooze, right?
So it's funny.
But one
Our
time I
path,
watched her
yeah,
dance. Yeah, so she was dancing with oh, what's his name? Desiree's partner. He
Alex.
does mostly bachata. Yes, her and Alex were dancing to a mambo tune, to a salsa tune,
Hmm.
and I was mesmerized. I thoroughly enjoyed that dance. They both, because they're both phenomenal dancers, and they both introduced their own flavor at
Yeah.
different times, and it was just wonderful. So I would say, yeah, I would say Marisol.
Okay. All right.
So
I like
shout out
that.
to Marisol.
Yes. Shout out to DJ Marisol. All right.
Yes,
Next question would be, what did you want to be at 10 years old?
that's easy. At 10 years old, I wanted to be a biochemist.
Oh, I love that. I
That's
love that
yeah,
answer.
a biochemist because I was heavily into comic books,
Mm,
and of course I was into Marvel. And
yeah.
one of my favorite, uh, you know, Marvel characters is Henry Pym. Henry
Hmm.
Pym started out as he was a biochemist, and he started out as Ant Man,
Hmm.
and later on he became Giant Man, and then later on he became Yellow Jacket,
Mm.
and then after that I think he was Goliath. But either way, I just love the fact that he was able to do the things he did because of biochemistry, and I was like, that's what I want to be.
Mm.
Never surfaced. In fact, I took the test for Bronx High School of Science, um, and didn't get it, and my hopes were dashed. And but I was a medic in the Air Force, so that was
Mm.
that's the closest I got. you know,
Okay. All right.
yeah, biochemist.
Next question. This might be a spicy one. Your experience in New York and LA.
Okay,
On one, on two.
and what's the real question?
The real question is, does one of those styles really excite you more in a social setting? Because like you said, there are people that love performances from both styles, but you as also as a social dancer, knowing, like you said, over the years you've been able to know both styles. Is there one that still just gets you right in that mood? Sometimes there's ones that kind of warm you up, but is there a kind of a style that you may prefer for you?
Yeah, timing preferences, is a big thing for me. When I get on the dance floor, especially of late, I know who I'm dancing with. So, you know, I mean, I don't know. I may not know them personally, but I could have been
Yeah.
watching them and go,
Yes.
okay, they did some too. Um, I, of course, hands down, my preference is dancing on two. I prefer to dance on two.
Mhm.
Once I learned how to dance on two, I felt I felt so connected to what was happening musically, rhythmically, whatever. I call it being in the pocket. You're there. I don't scoff at dancing on one.
Mhm.
You know, uh, I feel there are dancers on one who look and dance phenomenally, and sometimes you can't even tell if you didn't hear the music and you watched them dancing, you
Yeah.
couldn't tell if they were dancing on one or dancing on two. You know,
Okay.
but you know, dancing on two is my preference. So I even when I was in LA, of course I did a lot of dancing on one because
Yeah.
there- there's no way around it. But
Yeah.
yeah, my preference is dancing on two.
All right. Next question. Another dance related question. If you can give one word to kind of describe the dance community as a whole, from kind of the beginnings of where you started to just your overall observation now, what is one word, if you could give, to kind of describe it?
Community.
Mm.
Yeah, we're all in it together, and so what we do affects everybody. Maybe not on a small scale. I mean, maybe not on a large scale, but on a small scale, it does. And so, we have to be cognizant of the community. We have to understand. Um, Sometimes people don't understand that it's community, and that there are certain things that shouldn't be done. I don't know if that's going to be a question coming up,
Hmm.
but there's certain things you just don't do. Like drinking on the dance floor or smoking when they used to be smoking, cigarettes
Yeah.
and stuff. You don't do that on the dance floor. You don't hang out on the dance floor. If you do, get on the edges and stuff like
Yeah.
that, because it is a community. People want to be dancing and that kind of stuff. But yeah,
Okay.
community I think is big.
All right. So next question, and kind of dives right into that, is can you name at least three do's and don'ts, if you can, or a few pointers of what kind of prospective new dancers should know, or even the dancers now currently, kind of some, hey, this is stuff you should do, and this is stuff you shouldn't do. I know you kind of just touched on that earlier.
Well, yeah, I think that mistakes happen on the dance floor,
Hmm.
right? Um, and some mistakes are so totally avoidable. But even if they are or aren't, whatever, people should be mindful of their surroundings. And so if you bump into somebody,
Yeah.
just apologize. Say, hey, I'm, just, oh, are you okay? Whatever,
Yeah.
I do that even if they bump into me. Oh, you
Yeah.
okay? You know, I don't like feeling, and I feel like I'm part of the dance floor. You stepped on me, and you just keep moving. Like, you know, maybe I'm just an old guy who just don't like that. But if
Mhm.
you step on me, I want you to acknowledge that you did that at
Yeah.
least.
Just a simple like look, nod, or hey, I'm sorry. It's
Right,
okay. That's
right,
that's.
exactly. Another thing is the connection. Sometimes some
Mhm.
people, especially early on. Oh, I have low battery, so I'm gonna take off the headset and plug in
Okay.
my. All right.
Got
So yeah, I'm down to 10%. Who knows what's gonna happen now? So connection, right? So let's
yeah.
say when you hold each other, especially in New York. Like I learned a long time ago in New York that especially that hand where you do your turns and all that,
Mhm.
you don't grasp the hand. You apply pressure. Everything is a pressure, right? You have forward pressure, compression. You have leverage. That's a weight pressure. So that's the only
Mhm.
time. So there's no grabbing. So grabbing somebody,
Yeah.
I I remember this one lady I did privates with, and she would do what I call the claw. instead of putting her hand on my back, whatever, or on my
Hmm.
shoulder, she would grab my shoulder and she would
Oh,
be gripping my shoulder. I'm like, I would lose concentration. It was uncomfortable. It was like,
yeah.
but claw, like please, no claw, And that goes with holding hands. Like
Mhm.
I know not everyone dances the same way, so you may have your hand palm to palm or fingers in or whatever, But when you're turning or things like that, right, you gotta let go,
Yes.
right? You can't be holding on and breaking fingers, and so that's a don't. And a do. Um, you know, be be polite to your partner. I mean,
Mm.
if um, you know, say thank you after the dance. Hug or whatever. If somebody feels uncomfortable doing something, stop. You
Yeah.
know, if you're a leader, and
Hmm.
then when the break comes on, when the montuno or the mambo comes on, and you're ready to do shines, and your partner's not doing shines, stop doing shines and get back with her. She's gonna feel like an idiot. So go back and dance with those kinds of things.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really like you said, observation. Like you observe the dancers that you want to dance with at these events. Also, when you're having that dance with someone, connect with them, look at them, make sure they're there, that they feel comfortable. I love that answer. All right, second before last question: what is a special talent that many people wouldn't know you have?
Special talent. Well, I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't know if you call it a talent, whatever. But like right now,
Hmm.
COVID is giving us all these opportunities to do certain things, whatever. And I've been taking advantage of GarageBand.
Oh.
Yeah, so I have about I have 20 complete projects that I have done, dance music, not salsa, dance
Mhm.
music, and I have a good six more that are almost ready to be completed. Uh, and if I say so myself, they're pretty good.
All right. I
So
would definitely love to hear those for sure.
that's um, yeah, I think they're dance worthy. So
All right.
that's my talent.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, anyone that can kind of start from scratch and make their own music, I think definitely is a talent. And even kind of harping back to our last topic, Mike over here is saying, thank you for saying that we need to get back to those things on the dance floor. Because I
Yeah.
definitely think connection was a big thing. So definitely. And now this brings me to my last question on this segment. I love asking this question. Everybody's answers are crazy, but here we go. If you're on an island, and disclaimer, there is no Wi Fi, um, what are three things that you would have to have with you?
Three things. Well, of course, I would need, you know, Puerto Rican food,
Okay.
right? Um, a way to be able to still listen to and create dance, music,
Hmm.
and good people to spend that time with.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Definitely. I
yeah.
definitely love those
Because
answers.
I'd get lonely pretty quick.
Don't we all sometimes?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
man, Mike, thank you so much for doing this
Oh,
segment.
this was wonderful, man. This is great.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it kind of brings us now to the conclusion of our discussion tonight. And like many of all my guests, I tell them this is really just a part one. So I know more parts because I definitely want to have you on for future interviews, and we can get really in depth with the stories. I'm actually in the process of creating a panel of a lot of legendary artists, performers, social dancers like yourself that I want to bring on a collective like people like you, Ishmael.
That'd be
Uh,
awesome.
I already have that in the works. Things
Oh,
are
great.
yes, so that's something I definitely want to bring everybody on, and kind of reminisce and talk about the past, present, and what we see towards the future. But at least before we do conclude, again, I want to thank you so much for giving your time, your effort, allowing me to learn from you. Like so many people that I've been able to learn from. And I would love to know as well, before we really conclude, is what do you really see for the future of our community?
Well, that's again, that's a really hard question, especially because I've been out of the loop per
Hmm.
se, other than digitally.
Yeah,
Um, but I do understand that music and dance evolves.
yeah,
It always has, and it will continue. Case in point is the Kali influence.
yeah.
Um, and not my cup of tea, but I think that it's viable. It's important because they are part of the world and they love salsa just as much and as deeply as we do. And
Yeah.
so and I've seen someone introduce me. Um, there's this. I think there's a young lady in New York who is from Colombia or knows the Cali style, but has enmeshed it with mambo,
Yes.
and it was interesting. So I think that the future holds more uh, evolution or a collaboration, if you will, of styles, um, into mambo, but also events because of COVID. Well, I think will be a little bit more, uh, a lot more interesting because we're getting a lot more. People are still trying to connect with us and keep us connected through event spaces digitally. That once we're able to come back together, we're going to be able to really take off with it. Because I know you do, I do. I know a lot of people
Mhm.
miss that whole, other than sex, dancing to salsa music is freaking, awesome,
Yeah.
to the soul,
Yeah.
So we need that touch. We need to be able to touch each other, and
Hmm.
and and even if it's just one dancer at a time, you know. So once we get together, I think that we're going to be seeing better things from each other, and hopefully there'll be less of the negative competition,
Hmm.
and backstabbing that has occurred. Um, I think that COVID has brought the best out of us, you know,
Hmm.
in the salsa community relative to salsa.
Yeah.
I just want to make that clear because it's also brought the worst out of us in other things, and
Yeah.
Mike Trump and all that stuff. But that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, I see that. I see good things,
Yeah.
and I hope to be a part of it. So that's that's my view.
Absolutely. And I mean, for me, just being able to talk to you, you're definitely, for me, I feel like an historian, but also a mentor in a sense, because what you're doing and what you've been doing of trying to push the culture forward and relay information, it's the same thing I want to do. I want to be that person that people can say years now contributed to our community in a positive way. And for me, I know from the future on in, any work that you have, I'll definitely be promoting it because I want
Wow,
people.
thanks.
To get this, yeah, I want people to get the same information I'm getting. And at least before we do conclude tonight, I wanted to know if you had any last few words for myself in the audience, and also how maybe
Hold on, hold
people
on,
can
hold on.
contact you.
Hold on, I'm sorry. That
Gotcha,
last sentence I couldn't hear. We're getting that thing we talked about earlier.
gotcha.
That
Are you able to
jittery.
Are you able to
Yeah,
hear me now?
I am. I hope it's gone away now.
Oh,
But
okay.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Continue.
No, I
What
was
else?
just sorry. I was just saying if you had any last words for
Oh,
myself in the audience and how people can contact you if for any of those classes that you may have in the future.
well, the first thing I want to say is that I've always felt this way, which is why I was always good. I always felt okay about the types of attendance that I would have at events, even though I would have 100 plus people. other classes could could fill the room, whatever. And I understand partly some of the reasons why. And one of them is that just like anything, uh, even though the material is important, it's only important when it's important to you. And so I'm not one to try and force feed anybody my information, how how they could learn everything relative to dance, how to be part of the music, because your rhythm also aligns with clave. um, but know that once you decide that it's important, then you'll make an effort to make it happen for yourself. So I think that's my message to the masses in general. As far as getting a hold of me, well, I'm on Facebook. You can look up Mambo Fellow with no W. It's a play on Bello, Mike Bello, the Mambo Fellow, no W. Uh, Also, I'm on Instagram, but I don't really use it that much. But I am there. I also have um, a teaching site, so it's mambofellowschool.teachable.com. So I have several courses and programs on there, from the salsa rhythm for dancers, um, curriculum, to the salsa music rhythm phasing and timing, and the practice and counting, salsa mambo practice and counting, and several others, plus bundles and things like that. So if you're interested in learning, um, there's a bunch of modules on there. Check them out. Refer other people if you like. Um, and that's pretty much it. I do have a Twitter account, but I don't use it. So that's me. You know what? Wait. I'm gonna put this on again. I don't know if you can
Are you
hear me,
good?
but oh, there you go.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Sorry. But yeah, technical difficulties. But
Okay.
honestly, I really, really appreciated tonight, us having this talk, learning so much more about you, about your history, about your experiences, the pros and cons of what you've been able to witness over the years. It's been amazing being able to talk to you, learn from you, and as well as the people in the comments that you'll see after this interview that have been
Yeah,
able.
can't wait.
Yeah. So I thank you again, Mike. I thank the audience, everyone tuning in on Tubachata Radio, and everyone, please again stay safe, stay well, and definitely cheers to a new year. So, Mike, again, stay safe out there, and we'll definitely be meeting soon.
Love you all. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great